Hello, welcome to my channel and thank you for being here. Today's talk begins a new series of talks that will work through my latest project. It's an ongoing project, it's part of a trilogy which is entitled Unsettled, the 100-Year War of Resistance by Xhosa against Boer and British, and by Cedric Nunn, and is a publication that I'm working through. This particular publication, the English version, although there is also a German imprint. To begin with, I would like to once again extend my thanks, acknowledgement, and a huge gratitude to the three authors who produced texts for this monograph, this publication, who are the retired historian Jeff Perez, an authority on the Eastern Cape, and who generously oversaw my half-hearted attempts at my research and writing into this, and so what I looked at and how I interpreted that, as well as the writer and academic Xhosa, who is himself originates from a family who could be considered protagonists in this Eastern Cape story. And the third writer being academic and associate professor Imnilika Jaiwadeen, who whose writing is described as being as a nexus between written text, visual art, photography, and transnational, transhistorical implications of colonialism, ongoing forms of discrimination, displacement, and migration on individuals and communities. So I think three authors well placed to complement and the images and contextualize them in a sense. So the images that I've chosen to begin with, the first one, the caption reads, sorry about this. The road to Somerset East and Breintjieshoogte and the Bosberg Range. The 100-Year War between colony and Xhosa, 1779-1879, began in this region. The series of clashes historically known as frontier wars date back to 1779 when Xhosa people, Boers and the British clashed intermittently for nearly a century. These were largely due to colonial expansion, which eventually dispossessed San, Khoikhoi, and Xhosa people of their land and livestock, amongst other things. And of course, that expansion continued beyond the Eastern Cape post the 100-Year War into the rest of the country, dispossessing Tswana, Sotho, Pedi, Zulu, and all the other tribes. So this image, which is one of the few of a road leading into a landscape, offers quite a splendid view of the Breintjieshoogte range, Bosberg, and it was in this setting that historians acknowledge that the frontier war really, took shape. And to the left of this image is Graaff-Reinet, and that was the previous border from which the border of the expansion, if you like, from which the next step of transgressions, land grabs, to where we would describe them today, took place, moving into this landscape, into more and more fertile and desirable land. And the clashes took place. There are many stories told wonderfully in uh, Noel Mostert's Frontiers, from which I took a lot of inspiration and information for the story that describe the nature of those clashes. But that this landscape that can seem so nondescript from a distance, um, you know, is of course peopled and detailed and rich and verdant in many many ways. And so the next image um, delves a bit into that, which the caption reads: "The ruins of the historic Prinsloo farmstead." Willem Prinsloo was the first settler at Boschberg, later renamed Somerset East. The Dutch authorities held the Prinsloo's responsible for violences and annoyances against the Xhosa, which resulted in the First Frontier War, 1779. So this ruins on this farm that I um, um, was informed of and visited, and found that in fact it was now it had now been uh, uh, subject to a land reclamation and was lying largely in ruins, with pillaged buildings like the one that you see, which was accredited as being, from that period um, of the late 1700s and early 1800s, and which is a shame, really, in our ongoing desecrations and decimations of our history, that we allow our history to be um, abused in such ways. But the Prinsloo's were, those land grabbers of the past, and a huge amount of the colonial expansion was really people land grabbing along the way. The third image looks. The caption reads, "Looking over Somerset East from the Boschberg." I'm massacring some of these names. I know I'm English speaking and I struggle with some of the Afrikaans, beautiful Afrikaans words and names. But here you look over the pretty town of, and the Bosberg is a nature reserve, the part that I entered, and the vantage point that I located to photograph, looking back towards the Zeerberg, in fact. So that first image of the road would have been from that far mountain range in this direction. And now looking back over these plains and the town of um, Somerset East. Somerset East was very similar to Cape Town in the sense, as a frontier, in that it was the location of the company gardens, because armies march on their stomachs, and soldiers don't only just eat meat; they eat vegetables as well, which were grown in the company gardens. In this, that was the reason for, apart from being a garrison, a fertile place where uh, victuals could be produced to feed the conquering army. And no doubt, many dramas took place throughout, um, look, originating from this from this rather pretty town of today. So I'm going to end the talk today, and we will be working through over another 100 images in the course um, of these talks, looking at Unsettled. And as I said, Unsettled is part of a trilogy. The second part looks at the disposition of the Khoi and the San, and the third part looks at slavery. So, but that will come much later, because those have not yet been uh, finalized. Although the 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 a working project exhibition on the koi and the sand has been produced called Return, provisionally titled Return, which I showed at the Homecoming Center of the District 6 Museum a few years back. But the project has a long way to go still. So thank you for watching, and remember to press the like button if you enjoyed this talk and would like to see more, as well as press subscribe. So until the next talk.